Dear Mr. President, dear Mr. Prime Minister, honorable colleagues, presidents of parliaments and heads of delegation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open today's summit by thanking each and every one of you who have come to Ukraine on this day, when we remember the events of 3 years ago. On this very day, on 31 March 2022, the Ukrainian defenders liberated the town of Bucha. Then the world saw the true face of the Russian invaders. Dear colleagues, please, your attention on the screen. Dear colleagues, now I would like to give the floor to the President of Ukraine, Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much, dear Speaker, dear Ruslan, Prime Minister, dear guests. I would like to thank you for this very special, indeed, format of getting together this gathering. Dear guests, Your Excellencies, representatives of the parliaments, heads of the parliaments from European jurisdictions, our friends from the EU and other countries. Thank you for getting together with us today. We are in Bucha right now, our Ukrainian town, where 3 years ago the world started to realize of the killings, all the atrocities. You could see people in the streets being killed, the evidence of torture, degrading treatment, and that pointed to the fact that that wasn't just a war of one jurisdiction against another. That was the conflict of two systems. Our European system, where life and dignity of a human being right supreme, and the Russian system, where anyone can be killed, anyone can be degraded, anyone can be deprived of their house, of their property. And we can see what the Russian system is, what people are like, people educated or rather fabricated by the system. Now, we could see that back then in the streets of Bucha. After that, nobody can tell that they do not understand or are unaware of the things developing in Bucha, happening in other communities of Ukraine, smaller villages, Yahidne village in Chernihiv region, Chernihiv country, where the Russian occupiers for more than 3 weeks kept all the, without any exception, all the dwellers in the basement up to Mariupol, which was fully destroyed and burned down by the Russian impact. We remember the disaster of every such community, every town, every place, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Vuhledar, many other villages and towns which ceased to exist practically. And there's nothing there but the ruins, and that's how the Russian flag comes with its flying colors. We remember our people being destroyed, our POWs in Olenivka. We remember how they degraded people in isolation in Donetsk prison. The art center converted into a prison as an embodiment of the Russian universe. One of the biggest and the most conspicuous symbols of the Russian system and the whole Russian war against Ukraine was graves of common people in the backyards of their households. That can never be forgotten. This man-made catastrophe, not just the deeds of the Russian state, but specific individuals, occupiers. They all have their names, their surnames, and they have to be condemned, and they have to be adjudicated for what they did back then. We will never forget the Russian crimes. They will not get away with that impunity, because that would have meant to agree that such a system as exists in the Russian Federation has the right to exist and to expand at the expense of other nations, neighboring nations. They devour people, they consume people. And I would like to thank all the high representatives of the states, their respective jurisdictions, but I would like to dedicate a moment of silence to the love and memory of Ukrainians who perished in this war because of the Russian aggression here in Bucha and also in other places and other towns and villages. Thank you. Thank you very much. Be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed. Dear friends, the strength of parliaments is in its ability, in the ability to unite different parts of the society, and there's a value-based foundation, a great mission for the parliaments. They can house the majority, and that's what we need. We need this unity, we need this strength, this majority. We all would like to conclude this war as soon as possible with the safeguards of security and lasting peace and decent future for the sovereign nation. What it means? What does it mean? It means that the Russian Federation should not be appeased or rewarded for this invasion. They should not evade responsibility, just responsibility for what they have done. We cannot attach normalcy to evil and come back to a normal state of affairs, come back to this kind of Russia. They have documented more than 183,000 war crimes related to this aggression of Russia against Ukraine. This is without access to the major part of the temporarily occupied territories of our state. There we will find thousands, maybe scores of thousands, hundreds of thousands of crimes to be documented, and tens of thousands of losses. And these are thousands of very cruel, atrocious crimes, executions of POWs, civilians, rape and torture. Nobody in Europe would like to see their children, God forbid, around such Russian criminals. We need active international law that can guarantee for our people and all the European communities protection against such threats. Justice should be restored so that the evil does not breed. The pressure against Russia, sanctions against Russia are necessary for the war and degrading it not to expand, not to creep out. This is clear for everyone who is not closing one's eyes and not plugging one's ears against reality. Please support our protection. Please support our aspirations for peace and support dissemination of truth on this unfair war and everything necessary for decent peace and real responsibility for war crimes. Please remember that Bucha is not somewhere in Ukraine out there. This can happen to any European jurisdiction if our unity now fails us for the sake of real responsibility of Russia liability for this kind of war. Thank you for your support. Thank you for participation in this very important summit. And thank you very much on behalf of the Ukrainian nation, so that from the very first days you've been standing with Ukraine, supporting life and livelihoods in Ukraine and fight for the life and livelihoods. Thank you very much. Glory be to heroes. Glory be to Ukraine. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. President now leave us. Thank you very much. Thank you for your strength, and thank you that you join us. And today we'll join you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And we continue our work. Dear ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Mr. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. Denis Shmyhal, this our best friends of the Parliament. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. We have the great cooperation, and thank you too for your strength, for your supporting and for our cooperation. And if you allow, I want to invite Mr. Prime Minister. Denis, the floor is yours.
Esteemed Mr. President, esteemed Mr. Speaker, distinguished speakers, vice speakers, MPs, dear colleagues and partners and friends, 3 years ago, the occupying force was concluded liberation of Bucha. That was one of the breakthrough moments in our fight for our independence. Thanks to heroic behavior of Ukrainians, we upset the intentions to take over Kyiv within 3 days. In Bucha and other adjacent communities, we discovered and exposed bad crimes. After the liberation, we witnessed the unheard of and seen of in 21st century crimes, the streets strewn with bodies in towns and villages, cars just shot at, kidnapping, torture. After the short occupation, more than 1,700 people had been killed. In all Kyiv region, Kyiv country, it was exponentially higher. That was documented. The people giving orders and carrying out orders had been identified and documented. The criminal responsibility is inevitable for those people, and financial responsibility for Russia, with the freezing and confiscation of the assets belonging to Russia. There were colossal damages to our energy sector, residential housing infrastructure. According to the World Bank, in order to rebuild and recover, we need $524 billion. in equivalent. So confiscation of the frozen assets of Russia is a unique and immediate need. The wounds of Bucha will never heal. Like Mariupol, Izum, Olenivka, Kramatorsk, and other painful spots on the border of our country, on the map of Europe. And we remember about victims of the Russian terror. We praise the liberators, the heroes, and we'll do everything to punish the enemy according to the international law. This is one of the prerequisites of just and lasting peace with the international organization, international partners, all the people of the goodwill, with their assistance. And we would like, of course, to thank you speakers, MPs, for your unwavering support through all the 3 years of full-scale aggression and invasion. Thank you for your support in Russia not getting away with that, not enjoying impunity for the crimes that you've seen in the photos and videos. And with Mr. Speaker, we witnessed that 3 years ago in this community and many other communities of Ukraine, which had been liberated, the ones still under the Russian attack. Thank you for your political will, for your political signal. And today, with your presence in the Bucha Summit, you manifest your support. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And now I would like to bring to your attention the testimony of the residents of Bucha from those terrible days. We will see a short video followed by the story of Miss Victoria Mayor. Please look on the screen.
Про те, що вона бачила на власні очі.
3 роки тому назад загинув дорогий, рідний для мене чоловік Клімцов Олег Сергійович, з яким я прожила 19 років. Так як мої вікна прямо виходять на ці гаражі, кожен ранок все рівно я дивлюсь і бачу цю сцену, як лежить тіло Чекана Василя, який був поруч із Олегом. Вася тут лежав розстріляний, а Олежка сидів в машині, його в машині прямо розстріляли. Якби вони заховалися, якби вони не рубали дрова, якби вони не приносили воду, якби не здобували харчі, вони ризикували собою. Я їх називаю, як кажуть, беззбройні герої. І вони робили те, щоб вижили інші люди. Це був мій перший чоловік і моя перша любов, моє дійсне кохання. А зараз я потрібна другому чоловіку, який зараз в полоні, якого я чекаю. Кажуть, що війни немає. Вона живе в мене вдома. Вона живе на моїй роботі, де я працюю вихователем. Коли діти прокидаються від того, що тривога, і їх треба переносити в укриттях на руках. І вони за тебе цепляються, тому що вони бояться. Я вірю в Бога. Я вірю, що навіть ці втрати, я знаю, що вони не даремні. І я не хочеться не трошки України втрачати, тому що невже дарма загинули стільки хлопців.
Miss Mayor is here. Please.
Я дружина військовослужбовця майор Володимира Івановича, який з 15-го року несе службу в НГУ 3018 Гостомельська, рубіж. 16.06.24 року він пропав безвісти. На даний час країна-агресор повідомила, що він знаходиться в полоні.
He got missed in June 2024 and now he's in a prison in the Donetsk region and the occupied territory. I'm also a sister, and my brother, he's also missing now. He was a civilian. He was a geologist, and during a full-scale invasion, he became a sniper, and he became a member of the military brigade named after Bogdan Bezruchka, and then he was missed in action in Avdiivka. Later, I became a wife of another serviceman who also was killed. I'm an aunt of a young boy who was killed not far from Bucha. Now I'm a teacher in the kindergarten. I'm a widow, and I'm a daughter of elderly parents, and I beg you to help us to survive and to calm down our kids who are getting scared when they hear the sounds of sirens. They start trembling, and each time when I look at them, I recollect all young and older men who were killed in action. And when during a siren and air raid alert, I take these children and I carry them to a shelter. I feel that I can do anything possible to defend them. I would like to thank you to the President of Ukraine, who did not escape from Ukraine back in 2022. I'm very grateful to all the members of the Cabinet of Ministers and the Speaker of the Parliament who did not quit the country in 2022. They stay with us. And one more thing I would like to mention. Please bring back our prisoners of war. I would like to mention Zinchenko, Major Zinchenko, one of my relatives who is now imprisoned in Russia. Please bring him back. I know that government works hard to bring all those prisoners of war back, all those captives. And I beg you to do everything possible, because I keep thinking of him every day. Thank you, Victoria.
Please accept our deepest condolences. I'm absolutely convinced that all those responsible for your pain and the suffering of all Ukrainians will be brought to justice. Dear colleagues, our next speaker, Mr. Oleksiy Homenko, Acting Prosecutor General of Ukraine. Mr. Homenko, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Prime Minister, dear guests, dear partners, and participants of the summit. Today, we had come together to commemorate the day which had become a day of hope and a symbol of mourning. And I would like to assure you that for all the law enforcement officers, this is a symbol for revival of justice. 3 years ago, on this day, the whole world has seen the true face of so-called Russian peace. In Bucha region, there were more than 9,000 war crimes, and more than 500 people were killed. 1,700 people were killed. In result of our investigation, we delivered 178 summons to the suspects, and that Bucha atrocities, they were not just occasional, because this was an intended action which was uncovered by the Russian government, and Ukraine is very resolute to bring all the guilty to responsibility. We cooperate with our partners at the international level. More than 25 countries carry out their own investigations of the war crimes and file cases to court. We continue our cooperation with the ICC, which has issued 6 arrest warrants to the suspects. We also continue our cooperation with Eurojust. Members of the European Parliament who are present here today all understand the importance of international justice, and I would like to thank you to the Speaker and to Ukrainian members of Parliament that in the first days of full-scale invasion, they have passed necessary pieces of legislation which made it possible for us to cooperate with the international law enforcement bodies. I would like to thank our partners who support us in the legal field and contribute to the initiatives related to preserving memory and condemn crimes of genocide, war crimes, and crime of aggression. Compensation of damages to the victims is also very important, and we should keep this in mind. And last but not least, the Russian Federation should be brought to responsibility for the crime of aggression, because this is the most tough and serious international crime, which results in the thousands and hundreds of thousands of victims. And this could be done only in the specialized tribunal. And I would like to assure all the guests of the summit that Ukrainian prosecutors and investigators continue their work.
Statement by 3 minutes. And now I would like to give the floor to Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the House of Commons of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Please, Sir Hoyle, the floor is yours.
Chairman Stephen Chope, my friend, fellow speakers, we're here today to mark 3 years since the horrific atrocities which took place in Bucha. On that day, evil visited this small city north of Kyiv. Lives were cut short, the indescribable scenes of horror. It should never have happened to the people of Bucha. It should never, ever happen again. Russia must be held to account for this atrocity. But 3 years later, we know tragically that other atrocities have befallen your citizens. This is a war that Ukraine did not start and did not want. I applaud Ukrainians for the refusal to forget what you are fighting for. Fighting for a country is simply not fighting for a territory. It's a fight for a home, a fight for an ideal and democracy. The endurance of the Ukraine people and their refusal to allow war to destroy their humanity, their culture, their democracy, honours these ideals. Because Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine is just not an attack on the fundamental principles of respect for sovereignty of territorial rights and the integrity of nations. It's just an attack on a peaceful, democratic neighbour, but on democracy itself. It is a threat to democracy and to freedom that hasn't been seen since the Second World War 80 years ago. We will not give up on these ideals. We will stand with you. It is a reason we are gathered today as speakers from across the democratically elected parliament, from across Europe, to show continued solidarity with you, to acknowledge that against all the odds, you have managed to maintain a functioning democracy, even in times of war, to ensure your legislature continues to operate. That is a true testament to the strength of democracy over authoritarianism. I will not forget when I first met President Zelensky in the UK in 2020. He was an elected president, a newly elected president. I was a new speaker. Masks at that time was our defence as we confronted COVID. We had no idea what was ahead of all of us. On the 24th of February 2022, the invasion of Ukraine began. On the 8th of March 2022, the House of Commons suspended to hear President Zelensky address us through the screens of our chamber. He spelled out the horrors of those first 13 days of war. His speech was devastating, inspiring. It galvanised the people of the United Kingdom in support for you. I, along with colleagues, have championed Ukraine at the P20, often in rooms filled with the huge Russian delegation. It's interesting about Russians, isn't it? They don't like to be attacked verbally by politicians, yet they're happy to exercise physical might against innocent civilians through torture, murder, rape, abduction. For me, it is vital to be the voice in the room that speaks out against Russian aggression, because if Ukraine falls, Europe falls. The support offered to you by the House of Commons remains unequivocal. In fact, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, Leader of the Liberal Democrats, have all sent personal messages. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said, "When I welcomed President Zelensky to Downing Street a few weeks ago, we were both moved to hear the crowds outside cheering at the top of their lungs. They were speaking for British people. I'm proud that this government is in unwavering backing from across Parliament, the whole country, is stepping up to support Ukraine. We remain absolutely steadfast in our determination to secure just lasting peace, to help the Ukraine people realise a brighter future they deserve." Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, said, "I'm immensely proud of the unwavering support we've provided for Ukraine and the people of Ukraine as they stand up against Russia's unprovoked aggression. Ukraine is on the front line, fighting for Western values. We must do all we can to support them." Ed David, Liberal Democrats, our brave Ukrainian allies are on the front line, fighting just not for their homes, not just for their freedom, but for the freedom and the security of people across Europe, including ours here in the UK. I am proud that Britain has been Ukraine's staunchest ally right from the start, standing together across the political spectrum, united behind President Zelensky and all of Ukraine. We thank our Ukraine friends and salute them for their courage, wresting Vladimir Putin's evil war machine. The UK is steadfast in our support for our sovereignty of the Ukrainians. We are steadfast in our support for the defence of your country. We are steadfast in the support to protect your rights and build your futures. Your values are our values. Your fight is our fight. Your freedom is our freedom. Slava Ukrainia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your leadership, and please, all the best for your MPs. Thank you very much for your support of Ukraine. Dear colleagues, we continue our summit, and I pass the floor to Mr. Martin Hojsík, Vice President of the European Parliament. Please, Mr. Hojsík.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me today to represent the European Parliament on behalf of President Roberta Metsola. It is indeed a very solemn and important commemoration. Bucha, Irpin, Borodyanka, Mariupol, Kherson, Izum, Sumy, Chernihiv. And the list is still not whole. And the murdering goes on, the aggression goes on, the war crimes goes on. It's really hard to describe the heroism of the Ukrainian people in defending their freedom, their dignity. And it's also really important that we stand by Ukraine, that we keep on demanding justice. Because the Russian war crimes, the murders, the tortures, the rapes, the abductions, all the horrible things still keep on going, and Putin's regime keeps on cheering to the perpetrators. Peace is something what we keep on hearing from the Putin's appeasers. Peace is something which we all strive. But the real peace is not simply the absence of violence. Justice is one of the fundamental pillars of any lasting peace. Dignity is another one. Every penetrator must be identified, every crime examined, every victim's voice heard. Justice must be served. It's not only about courtrooms. It's also about recovery, rehabilitation, and reintegration of the victims. It's about their own dignity, about building their own future, and it's really great to see that despite the horrible tragic events, Bucha is an example how Ukraine is recovering, even in the middle of this unprovoked Russian aggression. Since the very first day as a European Parliament, we stood by Ukraine, and we will keep on standing until a lasting, just peace is in place. We need to keep on supporting Ukraine, not only militarily, we need to keep on providing support to the people outside Ukraine, to the people who have suffered by the war. But we must never forget the massacre of Bucha. The painful memory of what happened here must serve as a reminder to all of us that such atrocities must be never allowed again and never must go unpunished. Accountability for these crimes is not just a desire, it's a necessity. First, we owe it to the justice, to the survival and the families of those who lost loved ones. We owe justice to Ukrainians as a nation. It's only to the justice that we can pave way for a future where such violence is never again repeated. Second, as I said, lasting peace needs accountability. In this regard, the European Union and its member states and the broader international community must work together to hold perpetrators accountable. The forthcoming establishment of the Special Tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine is a major step in this direction. As a Parliament, we welcome and support the efforts under the Council of Europe towards the creation of a special tribunal, but also progress under the Register of Damage and other initiatives to reach effective justice and redress. And let me remind, yes, there is a lot of Russian money that needs to be looked at and used for these very purposes. And thirdly, we cannot, even in the face of what's going on around the globe, fail the rule-based international order. We must uphold the basic principles of holding perpetrators to account. Pursuing effective justice is a backbone of the long-term international stability. Today's third anniversary of the liberation of Bucha reminds us again how important it is that peace is built on dignity, truth, and justice. Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Hojsik. Thank you for European Parliament, and special thank for Madam President, for Roberta Metsola. Please send for her the warm words. Thank you. I hand the floor over Mr. Vincent Blondel, President of the Senate, Belgian Federal Parliament. Mr. Blondel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, distinguished guests. Bucha is a name engraved in our collective memory, and it is our responsibility to ensure that it remains so. Bucha stands as a symbol of the profound horror of the war crimes committed by the Russian invaders against defenseless, innocent civilians. If these crimes in Bucha remain unaddressed, Bucha could become a symbol of impunity, of brute force going unpunished, and of undermined credibility of the international political and legal system. As Speaker of the Senate of Belgium, I have come to Ukraine and Bucha today to express Belgium's continued support for the Ukrainian people and to reaffirm Belgium's commitment to the international legal system that must be deployed to protect Ukraine. Belgium is a small, open, and internationally embedded country, one that has always been in the forefront of the development of international justice mechanisms. The fight against impunity is a priority for Belgium. Our engagement rests on the conviction that respect for international law, including humanitarian law, and the principle of the United Nations Charter should always be our guiding our action in all conflict situations worldwide. We cannot allow the international legal system to be undermined. Establishing a just and lasting peace in Ukraine means that Russia should compensate, and that was said just before, compensate the damage caused by its war of aggression. Belgium is a member of the Register of Damage for Ukraine. Our country is also actively participating in the negotiation to set up the Claims Commission. In line with this long-standing tradition, the Belgian Senate adopted a resolution 3 days ago. It was on Friday. The resolution calls for accountability of the Russian leaders and full support for the investigation of the International Criminal Court in Ukraine. The resolution calls also for adequate support for the establishment of a special tribunal to investigate Russia's crime of aggression against Ukraine. And the resolution also calls for the immediate and safe return of Ukrainian civilians and children forcibly deported by Russia. Through collective international effort, Bucha should become a symbol not of suffering and impunity, but of justice and strength of international law. Bucha must serve as a cautionary example to aggressor state and militia, including Russia's partners, who may contemplate committing similar war crimes against innocent civilians. Excellencies, distinguished guests, the lives lost in Bucha may not be restored. The wounds may never be healed. However, justice must prevail and live on under the name of Bucha. My message from Belgium to Bucha: we will remember, we will speak out, we will demand justice. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Blondel, and thank you for both Chamber of Belgium Parliament, because the both chambers are represented here. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Gordan Jandrokovic, Speaker of Croatian Parliament. Mr. Jandrokovic, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear friend. Mr. Prime Minister, dear speakers, deputy speakers, dear colleagues, to be here in Bucha today, dear Ruslan, to see St. Andrew's Church reminds me of your powerful speech in the Croatian Parliament in October 2022. You said that for Ukrainians and Croats, the bells of Bucha and Mariupol sound the same as the bells of Croatian heroic cities Vukovar and Gospic. The image you recalled became so much stronger today. We have gathered here today to commemorate the people whose lives were cruelly taken by the Russian aggressor in the tragedy of Bucha, as well as those who fell anywhere else in Ukraine. My thoughts and prayers go to the brave people of this country, especially to the families of all the victims. Dear colleagues, as we honor them, we are also closely following the dynamics of the current ceasefire talks. Croatia strongly believes that any ceasefire should serve not as the end point, but as a first step towards a just and sustainable peace acceptable to Ukraine. In the process so far, we have seen Ukraine's constructive dedication on one hand. On the other, we see Russia's cold and gameful approach. Moscow will keep distracting, stalling, and struggling to label anyone who wants a peace which respects international law as militants who want the war prolonged. And unfortunately, there are politicians who are not immune to this narrative, in the EU and beyond. Nevertheless, that cannot discourage us in standing with Ukraine in their quest for just and lasting peace. Because doing this also means we are defending our values and the rules-based order, and that is a responsibility we cannot shy away from. So, our concrete action and support is required in multiple directions. We must continue providing the help that Ukraine needs. For instance, the Croatian government adopted a 13th package of bilateral military assistance this month, the second one this year. Along with other aspects of aid, we also continue to offer our unique experiences in war crimes prosecution, humanitarian demining, and veteran care. This October, we will host an international conference on war veterans. I warmly invite representatives of your countries to attend. Dear friends, in order to strengthen Ukraine's position, we must all work on developing the necessary capabilities for the future. At the same time, we expect the final outcome of any negotiations to respect international law and Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Any other scenario would only reward and encourage the aggressor. This would have dire consequences for global security and the rules-based order, and this must be avoided. Finally, let me say that we are well aware that the road to a just peace may take longer than we hope. But from day one of the aggression, the people of Ukraine have given us reason to believe in their courage, their strength, and endurance. Therefore, it is our task and duty to remain with Ukrainians in their rightful and heroic struggle. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Yandrokis. Thank you, dear Gordon. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your personal support of Ukraine and our parliament. I remember that our Crimea platform was in your country, and that was remaining. It was the starting of Crimea platform. Thank you very much, and we continue, dear friends. I hand floor over Mr. Søren Halle, Speaker of Folketing of the Kingdom of Denmark. Mr. Gade, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Mr. Speaker, dear Mr. Prime Minister, distinguished guests. As already mentioned, we're here today to remember the massacre in Bucha in March 2022. Here, Russian soldiers ran amok in a frenzy of bloodshed, killing innocent men, women, and children. A brutal slaughter that served absolutely no military purpose. It was truly a crime against humanity. The Russian sheer cruelty was so horrific that words can barely capture its scale and nature. Despite its brutality, we must keep the story of this Russian massacre alive. We owe it to the death. We must ensure that those responsible are held accountable. We must prevent such horrors from happening again. If we cannot remember the past, we are doomed to repeat it. The massacre in Bucha have been recorded and documented in detail for later use in the ICC. It gives hope that justice will be served. The Russian massacre in Bucha reminds us that Ukraine's fight for survival is a battle between freedom and oppression, between democracy and dictatorship, between good and evil. Russia is trying with rare brutality to break the Ukrainian people and impose a regime they do not want. Having power does not make you right. In a world governed by law, the sovereignty and self-determination of nations must be respected. This is why Ukraine's fight is also our fight. Our nations share the same values. We stand together as part of the European family. Without a free Ukraine, Europe cannot be free. This is why I'm honored on behalf of the entire Danish Parliament to express my deepest sympathy and unwavering support for Ukraine and its brave people. I sincerely hope that a lasting and just peace will soon come to Ukraine. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, dear Søren. Thank you for your support. Thank you for F-16. Thank you for Danish model. Thank you for everything. Thank you, my friend. Now, dear colleagues, President Lauri Huzar will deliver his statement on behalf of the Riigikogu of Republic of Estonia.
Thank you. Honorable Chairman of the Verkhovna Rada, dear Ruslan, dear colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. When 3 years ago the media brought us images from liberated Bucha, the world was in shock. The Bucha massacre became a symbol of the horrors of Russian aggression, a place where the biggest crime against humanity in the 21st century was committed. This is definitely a war crime. Moreover, it is a genocide against the Ukrainian people. In April 2022, the Estonian Parliament was among the first to recognize Russian atrocities as an act of genocide, and we continue to call on national parliaments and international organizations to do the same. We cannot bring back the dead, but we are obliged to bring justice to the victims. We will never forget. Russia must be held accountable for its war crimes and the crime of aggression in Ukraine. Estonia stresses that those who bear the greatest responsibility for the crime of aggression, including the Troika, should be brought to justice. Initiating the process of establishing the special tribunal for the crime of aggression within the Council of Europe would be an important next step. Putin is not only an aggressor, he is also a war criminal and a mass murderer. The Russian people must understand that by supporting Putin and the war in Ukraine, they are complicit in war crimes. It is shameful that the Russian Orthodox Church justifies mass murder and crimes against humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia must compensate for the damage caused to Ukraine. As Russia refuses responsibility, the international community has both the justification and means to act. Last year, Estonia was the first country in Europe to adopt a law that allows the confiscation of Russian frozen assets. Over 200 billion euros in Russian assets remains immobilized in the EU. We must now mobilize our political will to use them for Ukraine's benefit. Dear colleagues, Putin's goals remain unchanged. He wants all of Ukraine, aims to create a buffer zone beyond Russia's borders, and ultimately seeks to dismantle the European security architecture. The outcome of this war is existential for Europe. Both Ukraine and Europe need a comprehensive, just and lasting peace based on international law, territorial integrity and sovereignty. Ukraine is fighting not only for its own freedom, but for Europe's. Our priority today must be to increase military aid to Ukraine, maintain unwavering support until Ukraine's victory, and ensure that Russia pays the price through full accountability, stronger sanctions, and action on frozen assets. Let us work on this together. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your support, and thank you for all that Estonia did, do, and will do for Ukraine. We appreciate it. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Jussi Halla-aho, Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Finland. Mr. Halla-aho, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Speaker Stefanchuk, Prime Minister Shmyhal, dear colleagues. I visited the town of Bucha as well as Irpin and Borodyanka for the first time in the summer of 2022, when the scars and the memories of the Russian occupation were still fresh. Coming back 3 years later is a very touching experience for me. Few of us could have expected or predicted in 2022 that the war would go on still in 2025. When the initial Russian attempt to take Kyiv had failed and large territories had been liberated in the Kyiv, Kharkiv and Kherson oblasts, there was a lot of optimism in the air for a time. However, while Mr. Putin had overestimated the capabilities of his corrupt military and underestimated the willingness of the Ukrainians to defend their country, we had underestimated the willingness of the Russian regime and the Russian society to suffer human, material, economic, and diplomatic losses for goals that do not make any sense. Mr. Putin believes that he will eventually win this war by attrition, that eventually Ukraine and the West will run out of resources and resilience. Therefore, he doesn't have an incentive to make peace. It is our opinion that the only way to force him into serious negotiations is to show him that we are prepared to invest heavily in our support to Ukraine and that we have the physical capacity to produce more material than the Russians. Progress has been made over the past 3 years, but not enough. While many small countries bordering Russia are doing more than their fair share, we need bigger contributions from all European countries, especially the big ones. European solidarity and burden sharing are just as important here as they were during the financial crisis 15 years ago, or the immigration crisis 10 years ago, or the COVID crisis 5 years ago. We must also make progress in the question of confiscating the frozen Russian assets. It must be made clear to the Russians that they cannot evade financial responsibility for the destruction that they have caused. It is equally important that those individuals who made the decision to start this illegal war and those who committed war crimes in Bucha and elsewhere do not escape criminal justice. And finally, Ukraine needs post-war security guarantees to prevent a new Russian invasion. This is not just about solidarity, it is also about our own collective security. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your support. Thank you for everything you do for Ukraine. Thank you for all Finland people. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, our next speaker is Ms. Torun Sveinbjarnardottir, Speaker of Althing of Iceland. Madam Speaker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, Prime Minister, esteemed colleagues, allies and friends. I greet you on behalf of Alþingi, the Parliament of Iceland, which is the oldest parliament in the world. It'll be 1100 years old in 5 years' time. We are a small nation and we depend on our allies in Europe and in North America, all over the world. But more than anything, we depend on the rule of law and respect for international law. It is my deep honor to visit Ukraine for the first time. I am moved by this visit to Bucha, and I am moved by the personal testimony that we have heard here during this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We must collectively stay the course and intensify our support for Ukraine. And it is important, as has been said here before, to prioritize and maintain continuous defense-related support. Peace can only be negotiated through strength. Iceland remains unwavering in solidarity with Ukraine. Unity among all European countries is, of course, essential. And Europe has been taking important steps in the recent days and weeks. And we welcome the leadership of the UK and France in a possible reassurance mission. Determination by our allies in the United States will also be key to deterring Russia from violating what will be agreed. The US must be ready and willing to take diplomatic and economic actions against Russia, as must we. And our unity is of utmost importance. For peace to be durable for Ukraine, it must have the military muscle to deter Russia. Supporting Ukraine's army in the long run is critical and should be a collective effort, preferably with both NATO and the EU in the game. I am proud to tell you that Iceland has been a member of the Registry of War Damage, and we hope that that will leave a track record that can be compensated in full for Ukrainian citizens and communities. At last, I would like to remind us all that for peace to last and for war to be over, we need participation of all, women and men, in Ukraine and in Europe. And we need to work harder together on getting the children back from Russia, the stolen Ukrainian children. That must be of utmost importance for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Ms. Svein Bjarnardottir. Another testimony from Ms. Alla Nechiporenko, who survived the horror of the Russian occupation in March 2022. We also see the short video followed by the story of Ms. Alla. Please look on the screen.
«8 березня в нас зник газ, і ще раніше вже пропало світло, не було електроенергії. Будинок опалювати ми не могли, тому змушені були перейти в таке підсобне приміщення. Тут перебувала моя сім'я, тобто я, 3 дітей моїх, чоловік. Вони взяли велосипеди, чоловік поїхав. Він і не відчував загрозу, оскільки він вже мав контакти з росіянами. Я чула тільки голос, дитину не бачила, кажу, а у мене ключа нема, що трапилось, де папа? Він каже, нас розстріляли. У дитини в очах великий страх був, він каже, мама, не ходи, вони дуже злі, вони тебе розстріляють, ти не виживеш. У мене було відчуття таке, що, можливо, він все-таки живий і йому потрібна допомога. Мені сказали, що далі йти небезпечно, що стріляють без попередження, і я дуже боялася. Я попросила допомоги людей, молодих чоловіків, які переховувалися в садочку, в підвалі, щоб вони нам допомогли викопати яму на території. Земля була така ще мерзлувата, і весь час над нами були звуки військових снарядів. У нас багато людей були захоронені біля багатоповерхівок і в подвір'ях. Розраховуємо на те все-таки, що вирок буде винесений справедливий, наскільки він може бути справедливий.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Alla is here. Please, Alla, 1 minute is yours, please.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to welcome everybody here in Bucha. I understand my responsibility today. You have heard what happened to my family, what tragedy happened to me, like to many, many other Ukrainians. 3 years had passed since the tragic events, but each and every time when I think about that, I recollect that this is happening every day, and I cannot believe that we are in the midst of all this tragedy, that we are not in a movie or in a drama play. And now, every day, I try to find an answer why my children have to grow up without their dead, their beloved dead. Why, having lived with my husband for more than 20 years now, when I'm dreaming about my grandchildren, I realize that my grandchildren will grow up without their granddad. And every morning when saying Our Father with still closed eyes. I understand that this will influence all my future life. I came to terms with that reality, but I don't think that people shall suffer like that for the rest of their life. And thinking that, I ask myself why people, while soldiers, allow themselves to shoot into civilian population, into peaceful people who just live ordinary lives. And now, when I meet young Ukrainian couples who have just got married, I start thinking about their future, because in my opinion, every family in Ukraine is subject to suffering because of the events of this war. And the biggest question for me is whether a day will come when, being awakened and saying, "Our Father," I will feel happy because of peaceful life, and all the guilty will be brought to responsibility.
But to hear the person who were the witnesses of these horrible events. Thank you, Allah, and please accept our sincere condolences. Dear colleagues, now I give the floor to the Ukrainian Parliamentarian Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Dmytro Lubinets. Dmytro, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Mr. Speaker of Verkhovna Rada, esteemed participants. Today we are here to honor the memory of the victims and commemorate the anniversary of Bucha's liberation, a town that has become a true symbol of the cruelty of Russian troops towards peaceful Ukrainian civilians. 3 years ago, the Ukrainian army liberated Bucha, and with this liberation, the world learned the truth about the horrors that had taken place there. What happened here will forever be recorded in history as a terrible testimony to the crimes against humanity that the aggressor tried to conceal. During the Russian occupation of town, more than 1,000 people were killed in Bucha district, including 12 children from 1 to 15 years. Most victims were killed in the first 3 days of the occupation. Let me give you just one example, one real story. The Chikmaria family moved to Bucha from the Donetsk region from the first step of Russian occupation in 2014. When Russian troops entered Bucha, Alexander, his wife Margarita, and their 2 sons, Matvey and Klim, had to evacuate again. They got into a car, but before they could even drive out of the town, they were shot at by Russians, the whole family. Russia continues to deny any involvement in the killing of civilians, but thousands of facts show otherwise. Bucha is not the only town that suffered from the enemy's brutal aggression. Mass killings, torture, rape, and deportations are not just war crimes. They constitute genocide of the Ukrainian people. And when all the temporarily occupied territories are liberated, the world will see even more terrible evidence of Russian crimes. We will find the truth that makes the blood run cold. We will discover mass graves, tortured chambers, and broken lives. The establishment of a special tribunal for the crimes of aggression against Ukraine within the Council of Europe is not only a legal necessity, but also a moral obligation to those who suffered from the terrible war. This tribunal will be a powerful message to the whole world. We will not allow peace to be broken. We will not allow truth and humanity to be forgotten. Why did the world learn about the Bucha tragedy? Because the Ukrainian army liberated the town, and everyone saw the atrocities that had taken place there. Today, we must be convinced that what happened in Bucha has been going on for 11 years in all the territories that temporarily occupied by Russian Federation. Crimea, part of Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. On the same time, today, you need to be sure, dear colleagues, that even today, on this minute, someone from Ukrainian people on temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine under tortures by Russian troops. The longer they stay there, the more Ukrainian children will be deported, maimed, the more civilians will be killed, tortured, and raped. How much longer can we wait? 15 years, 20, 50? Every day is a threat to be killed or deported. On the level of your national parliaments, I pleasantly ask you, dear international partners, dear colleagues, please continue to support Ukraine by establishing long-term programs of supporting Ukrainian people and Ukrainian army. Recognize all activities by Russian Federation as a war crime, genocide. Support Ukrainian position. Please support establishing a special tribunal and continue sanction policy against representatives of Russian Federation, against Russian economy. This is the only one way how we can stop this war machine of Russian Federation. The whole world sees that Ukraine is not only fighting for our freedom, but also defending the fundamental human rights and values of civilized humanity, the right to life, dignity, and justice. Please stand with Ukraine. Memory to the fallen, glory to our heroes, glory to Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you for everything you do for Ukraine, because really, the Mr. Commissioner have the meeting with all victims who need the supporting. Thank you very much. Thank you for your great work. Dear friends, I invite Ms. Speaker Daiga Mireni on behalf of the Saima of the Republic of Latvia. Madam Mireni, the floor is yours.
Dear Ruslan, dear colleagues, excellencies, friends, today we remember the terrible events which took place in Bucha in March 2022. For a month, this small town experienced unimaginable horrors. European civilization in the 21st century met medieval barbarians savagely killing, victimizing, and torturing peaceful civilians. It must not be forgotten, and it must not be forgiven. Murderers must be called by their real name. They must be brought to justice and punished with all possible severity. There is no statute of limitations for crimes against humanity. A few days ago, we commemorated the inhuman deportations carried out by the Soviet occupiers throughout the Baltics. The aggressor state in the East may have changed its name throughout history, but its atrocious habits have remained the same. Russia is and remains a long-term threat to our security and democracy. Therefore, the sanction pressure against Russia must continue. In energy, finance, dual goods, we can do more. And perhaps the time has come to take the next step, seeing as Ukraine, for Russia, there is nothing humane or holy. We could continue sanctions in such areas as food, medicines. Latvia will continue to actively support the process of establishing the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. And in this context, I would like to commend the particular work done by the core group on the documentation. It is on the basis of the core group that the special tribunal will be established, and we expect a political decision to soon be made on this process. We will also continue our participation in the International Center for Prosecution of Russian Aggression Crimes against Ukraine, as well as we will continue our participation in the Joint Investigative Team. Latvia supports the establishment of the Claims Commission by an international treaty. It is crucial that this commission be set up within the time frame offered by Ukraine, and it should be completed by the end of this year. After the Claims Commission is established, further work will be needed to set up a compensation fund. Work also needs to continue on the return home of abducted Ukrainian children. There are more than 20,000 children that have been abducted, and slightly over 1,000 have been returned. It is a whole generation that can grow up outside of their country. We have to do everything we can to avoid this. We have to do everything we can to make sure that the aggressor can never do such crimes again and to ensure that they are punished accordingly. In conclusion, I would like to say that Latvia's support for Ukraine remains unwavering. Only the Ukrainian people have the right to determine their future. Only the Ukrainian people will decide on the acceptable or unacceptable conditions for peace. Latvia will continue to provide Ukraine with military support in the amount of 0.25% of its GDP. And yesterday, when we were coming here, we also received quite a sad news for Latvia. Our war medic, who has been helping Ukrainian soldiers for 3 years here, she was injured yesterday. She has been transferred to a hospital in Kiev. So if you allow me, I will go and visit her today. Thankfully, she has remained alive. Today, we are saving one life. Tomorrow, we will save more. But the main thing is that all together we can do more. We need decisiveness and taking decisions slightly quicker. Slava Ukraini, Slava to the glory to the heroes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Dear Daiga, thank you very much. Thank you for your unwavering support. And last year you hosted our Crimea platform, and thank you once again for everything that you do for Ukraine. Dear colleagues, the next speaker is Claude Wiesler, President of the Chamber of Deputies of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Speaker, dear colleagues. There is one aggressor, Russia, and there is one victim, that's Ukraine. This is the reality Ukrainians have to deal with every day. Ukraine wants peace more than anybody else, and peace discussions have to take into account this simple reality. This is not storytelling or a simple point of view. This is a truth, and we cannot accept any erosion of the truth through alternative facts. History and the writing of history must not be built on subjective narratives. We cannot allow the Russian war of aggression, and we cannot allow history to be rewritten based on biased perspectives. Historical truth must be grounded in objective evidence, rigorous analysis, and a commitment to accuracy, not shaped by political agendas. This is why Luxembourg is supporting efforts to document and prosecute the horrific acts committed by Russia here in Bucha and in many other places in Ukraine. This is why we support the proposed conclusions of the summit, insisting on the role of the ICC and the future role of a special tribunal. There can be no impunity for war crimes. International law demands restraint, protection of civilians, and when it is not respected, it demands accountability for those who violate them. Peace can only be the outcome of principled politics, persistent diplomacy, as well as unwavering enforcing of justice. Peace built on the principle of might makes right, humiliation, and profit will always be fragile. Peace grounded in justice endures. Mr. Speaker, dear colleagues, war times amplify our political responsibility. War not only threatens territorial boundaries, but also boundaries of morality. And as a matter of fact, our freedom and our democracies. Failing to help, failing to hold actors accountable, and staying silent is not a way to find peace. It would simply be complicity. This is why I decided to come here today. This is why I think we all decided to come. Our presence is more important than words. Only acts reveal our intentions. Only acts show where we truly stand. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your contribution. Dear colleagues, now it is a turn to the President of Storting of the Kingdom of Norway, and I hand floor over Mr. Masoud Garahani. Dear friends, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Ruslan, dear colleagues, friends. I want to start with some basic facts. Ukraine wants peace more than anyone else. Only Putin's Russia is responsible for this terrible war. We will never accept any other narratives. Over 3 years ago, Russian forces entered this town and killed hundreds of innocent civilians, many with their hands tied. I visited Bucha and Irpin as Ruslan's guest. This was on the May 8th in 22, the anniversary of our liberation from the Nazis in 1945. Seeing the mass graves made it clear to me that this too is a war between freedom and tyranny. Bucha was just the beginning of immense suffering for Ukrainians. We must never forget, we must hold Russia responsible. But Bucha is also a symbol of Ukraine's strong will to fight the aggressor. Everyone thought that Kiev would soon fall, but it didn't. Bucha was liberated soon after. And you, brave Ukrainians, continue to fight for your country, your independence, your freedom, and your democracy. For Ukraine to prevail, we need to step up our support. Across Europe, we are indeed stepping up. On March the 6th, the Norwegian government, along with parliamentarian leaders from all political parties, announced that the planned aid for 25 will more than double, from $3 billion to $8 billion to build up and to buy drones, artillery, and to boost Ukraine's defense industry. 11 days ago, during President Zelensky's second visit to the Storting, we confirmed Norway's strong support for Ukraine. Like you, we support peace. Ukraine has shown it's ready to negotiate. We know that each day you must protect your skies from Russian attacks, to protect your children. Now the ball is in Putin's court. The result must be a peace that ensures a free, sovereign, and democratic Ukraine. It must bring long-term stability and security. Only then can we truly honor the victims of Bucha and prove that their sacrifices was not in vain. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker Garakhani was one of the speakers who came here 3 years ago. And now he has absolutely seen what it was and how it is. Thank you. Thank you very much for you, for Norway people, for Norway Parliament, for strong supporting of Ukraine. Masoud, thank you very much. Dear friends, now I pass the floor to Ms. Malgorzata Kidawa-Blonska, Marshal of the Senate of Republic of Poland. Please, the floor is yours.
Bardzo trudno zabrać.
It is very difficult to take the floor after listening to all your interventions, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the Honourable Speaker, Ruslan. Thank you so much for organizing this summit in such a symbolic place, a place that speaks volumes of unimaginable tragedy and suffering of civilians inflicted by a ruthless Russian aggressor. The whole world has heard about this place. The tragedy of Bucha has gained international recognition and stands proof of Russian war crimes. Bucha is a symbol of not just tragedy, but also of Ukraine's resistance and its struggle for justice on the international arena. This is a very important and a very painful symbol. For that very reason, this meeting held on this day and now in this group is so important and so very much needed. Declaring war on Ukraine by Russia has shaken the foundations of our shared European space. As we sit here in this group, we don't need to convince ourselves that Ukraine is defending its own territory only. Ukraine is defending Europe. It's defending European values. That's why we are here together, because we know how important your resistance is for the whole continent, and we thank you for your struggle. We know that we won't let up supporting your fight, not even by an inch. Military support, sanctions against Russia, and humanitarian aid for Ukraine are all manifestations of greatest European solidarity, which has re-emerged after February 2022. When we look at the outcomes of recent European summits, this solidarity is not becoming weaker. It is stronger than ever before. I am certain that we should be using this positive power for what we've listed here to call for and demand condemnation of acts of aggression against Ukrainian children. Every day, children are dying. Children's hospitals are being attacked. We also see that Russian declarations are not bringing a stop to these attacks. We need to ensure that our children are safe, but we also need to provide help those children who have been forcefully abducted to Russia against their will, against the will of their parents. They need to have the opportunity to come back to their homes. We need to ensure that justice is served to those who are behind these crimes. And who is behind these crimes? A very brutal aggressor. This aggressor has been using the same methods for years. Current Russian activities bring back the darkest chapters of Soviet history. In Poland, in just about a dozen days, we will be celebrating the Katyn Massacre Remembrance Day. 85 years ago, at Stalin's order, more than 22,000 people were murdered. Their hands were tied behind their back. They were shot to the head, and they were buried so that no one could uncover the truth about them. When we look at photos from Bucha, we see exactly the same pictures. Bearing that in mind, and as a warning to the whole world, we should call for the truth, and we should call things by their name. We should point out what is the crime, who is the victim, and who is the aggressor. And we should also warn that crimes that remain unaddressed keep coming back. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for Europe to reveal its true potential. We are united in solidarity with the Ukraine, and we are witnessing a new chapter in the history of our continent. It depends on us what will be written in this chapter. Let me make this very clear. We want a stable and just peace in Ukraine. We want a free and independent Ukraine. We want a safe and united Europe. Slava Ukrainie!
Dziękuję bardzo, Pani Marszałek. Dear colleagues, I invite your colleague from Polish Sejm to continue, Mr. Szymon Hołownia, the Marshal of the Sejm of Republic of Poland. Mr. Speaker, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Ruslan, dear colleagues. First of all, thank you, Ruslan, for organizing this summit here, because especially in last weeks, last months, we see a lot of debates over Ukraine. We see some footages from Oval Office, from different places when Ukraine and its fate is debated. But all of these debates should be put in context. And Bucha is this context. When I was here for the very first time, I was deeply moved by what I saw, not only the pictures, but the place. That the place of this martyrdom, of these hundreds of people, looks like a casual neighborhood from our hometowns, from our cities. It's not a battlefield. It's a neighborhood with blocks of flats, with kindergartens, with schools, with markets, convenience stores, people living their everyday life. And this atrocity is coming on their heads. So this is the context. This should be always the context. Ukraine fate should be debate on. These people who are dying here, who are suffering here, who suffered here, who lost their lives, all of these tears we saw on these movies, all of these cries, all of these these feelings of these children missing their fathers and mothers. And when I'm trying to switch from the political context into moral context, into more personal context, because Bucha should be in our DNA. Bucha should be from right on the part of our identity. It's crucially important because subject without identity becomes an object. And we should be extremely careful when it comes to take part in different debates over current matters and carefully check if we are talking on the same things and if we are sharing the same values, the same definitions. Look at peace. We are talking right now about peace talks. But what is Russian definition of peace? What is Ukrainian definition of peace? This parish priest we met today in St. Andrew's Church, Andriy Halavin, once said that Ukraine's definition of peace is the moment when Ukrainians are not being killed. Russian definition of peace is when there are no more Ukrainians to be killed. And this is the fundamental difference we should have in our minds when we are starting or we are watching the peace talk process. We are not sharing definitions with Vladimir Putin. We are not sharing values with him. Of course, we should think about, taking all of responsible for this hatred, atrocities to the court, to justice. It's obvious. But first of all, we should act on the political level. We should do what politicians can do and what we can do. We are looking, of course, sometimes at these footages, as I mentioned, in the Oval Office, when there are some guys trying to persuade us that if you are trying to help someone, your helping hand first should be kissed by the victim. It's not my word of values. But going further, why are we still concentrating on Trump? Why we are not doing, shorter trips across Europe to convince ourselves that because this is European thing to unblock frozen assets. And this is European decision, not United States decision, to unblock frozen assets. It's crazy situation when we are paying and we are trying to find even more money to help, to rebuild Ukraine, to help the victims of the bandit, and not bandit is paying himself with his own money. He should do it with his own money, lying right now on our accounts. We should not, blame ourselves that we are not spending enough for Ukraine. We should take him to concrete financial responsibility because he's a bandit and he did it and he should pay for it. First, thank you very much. Once again, dear Ruslan, for me it's absolutely obvious, and for a lot of members of Polish Sejm, that we should support Ukraine on its way to European community, that we should not withdraw with saying out loud that Ukraine should be a member of NATO one day. Doesn't matter what this or the other alliance, partner in the alliance thinks right now. For me, Bucha will be always a very special place, and my last words are to the mayor of Bucha, Mr. Fedoruk, because I have the same bracelet as you have. When I was in Bucha, I asked you, is there any place I could have one? And right now I'm showing everyone in Poland who is asking me, what is this bracelet all about, And I'm telling them it's from Bucha. It must remember me every day on my political way. Where are the values? What I'm fighting for? What is the most important thing? And what is the second most important thing in your political way? That we are playing right now in a very difficult theater, in the difficult field. There is wrong, there is evil, there is white, there is black. And thank you once again, Ruslan, and all Ukrainian friends, to remember us, what is good. And that the duty of the politician is always to stand with the beaten, not with the aggressor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Shimon. Thank you for your amazing speech. Thank you for your support. You too, one of those speakers who was here in the Bucha, and you have too the possibility to understand what does it mean. Be here and be together with those people. Thank you once again, dear Shimon, for everything. Dear colleagues, our next speaker will deliver on behalf of the Parliament of the Portuguese Republic. Mr. President José Pedro Aguiar Branco. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Rosen. Speakers, delegates, on this day, filled with emotions in Bucha, I have 3 messages for you in 3 minutes. The first is about peace. In the Portuguese language, this word full of meaning can be summed up in 3 simple letters. Paz, peace. Unfortunately, it is not by repeating the word that we can achieve peace and maintain it. Unfortunately, it is not because we want peace that we have it. If it's true that peace must be negotiated, it must also be achieved. There is always an element of strength, political strength and effective strength, associated with any process aimed at peace. I believe that this is also why we are here, on this very symbolic date, at such a significant time, marked by movements in favor of some kind of a peace plan. We are here to support Ukraine in its conquest of peace, a support translated into political strength. This is also necessary in the negotiation process in addition to the indispensable force on the ground. The second message is one of justice. Any solution of peace necessarily passes through justice. Justice cannot be relegated or forgotten. There is no peace. People will not have peace if they are constantly plagued by a sense of injustice, by the enormous feeling caused by the invading forces. It is true that there is nothing that fully compensates for all the suffering, but something must be done. The last message relates to the geopolitics of democracies. At a time when we hear again of empires and spheres of influence. Empires are not democratic. Portugal is a country that for a long time had an empire. We know that the conquest of our democracy was closely linked to the end of the Portuguese Empire, which brings me to the following point. The erosion of democracy is only in the interest of the imperialist powers. It is therefore very important that the parliaments, here present, democratic parliaments, pay attention to the defense of democracy. I will end with a thank you to the Ukrainian people for not giving up defending their sovereignty, freedom, and democracy. Ukraine's struggle is the struggle of free Europe and the rules-based world. Thank you. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for Portugal people. You know that's in the Portugal, one of the biggest Ukrainian diaspora, and thank you that you support all Ukrainians which now are in your country. Thank you very much. Dear colleague, now I give the floor to the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Slovenia, Ms. Urška Klačkokčar-Županić. Please, Madam Speaker, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, today we mark the third anniversary of the tragic events in Bucha, a city that has become a symbol of violence, suffering, and immeasurable human loss inflicted upon the Ukrainian nation. 3 years ago, the world witnessed horrific crimes that shook our collective conscience. Crimes we had hoped, after the painful wars of the 1990s in the Balkans, would never again darken the civilized world. Killings, rapes, torture. Acts of inhumanity that have no place in the world we aspire to create. Yet Bucha is not only a symbol of suffering, it is also a testament to resilience. It stands as a symbol of defiance against ruthless violence and the unacceptable destruction of human life. It is not only a place of pain, but also a place where the indomitable human spirit has risen to confront evil. In Bucha, people have refused to let compassion fade. They have continued to show solidarity, support, and love for one another and for their homeland. This anniversary is a solemn reminder that justice, peace, and humanity are values that must be upheld and defended every day and every moment. Today, we do more than mourn those who lost their lives. We make a solemn vow never to forget. We remember the bereaved, those who have endured unimaginable horrors, and those who have fought with courage for freedom and dignity. The liberation of Bucha was more than a military victory. It was a triumph of humanity. When Ukrainian forces advanced to reclaim the city, they did not merely recover territory, they restored hope. They created the space to rebuild, to grieve, and to honor the victims. Dear Ruslan, thank you very much for organizing this summit, because I believe that it is very important to have personal experience. Because now we can bring the vivid images home and tell our people not only what happened in Bucha, but also how important it is to protect our values
and help Ukraine to achieve a just and lasting peace. Because it hurts me deeply as a human being to hear that people are still missing, that people are still tortured, and that people are still killed, and that children cling to their guardians, terribly afraid when they are carried to the shelters. And at the same time, there are autocrats, hungry for even more power, planning another attack on the democratic world, covered by deceitful talks of peace, but in reality, degrading smaller, more vulnerable nations. Because, as one speaker before me said, peace is not only the absence of violence, but also the presence of justice. On this anniversary, let us remember that every step we take brings us closer to a more just world, a world where such horrors have no place. Bucha serves as a powerful reminder that we must remain united in our pursuit of truth, justice, and peace. The aggressor, the Russian Federation, must be held fully accountable for its actions. It is our duty to support the work of the International Criminal Court, ensuring that it fulfills its responsibility to prosecute the most heinous crimes, crimes against humanity. Though today is a day of remembrance, it is equally a day of resolve. We owe it to the victims, the survivors, and to those who continue to fight for Ukraine's freedom, to ensure that their sacrifices will not be in vain. And I have one wish, my dear colleagues. My wish is that we gather again soon, and that at that time we will celebrate the victory of democracy, that we celebrate the peace for the people of Ukraine and the whole of Europe, that we celebrate the return of the abducted children, and that we discuss the confiscation of Russian assets to pay damages to the victims of this war and to rebuild Ukraine. Today we promise we will never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, dear Ushka. Thank you very much for your personal support and for support from your people, of Ukrainian people. Thank you once again. Dear colleagues, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Anders Norland, Speaker of Riksdag of the Kingdom of Sweden. Mr. Speaker, welcome.
Dear Mr. Speaker, dear Ruslan, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, when the brave Ukrainian forces fiercely stopped the invader from advancing, they exposed the heinous truth here in Bucha. Russian soldiers had burned homes and tortured, raped and murdered hundreds of innocent civilians. In hindsight, we know that what happened in Bucha was not an isolated incident. Other war crimes and crimes against humanity have followed. But Bucha still remains a symbol of some of the most despicable horrors. Russia has never dealt with or liberated itself from its long, dark history of brutality and imperialism. Its leadership is now seeking to realize imperial dreams at all costs, a goal it has pursued for many years. Instead of a reckoning with the past, we are faced with new chapters in Russia's history of abuse and terror. Sweden is fully committed to holding Russia to account for its illegal and barbaric actions in Ukraine. Impunity is not an option. Those responsible must face justice. Lasting peace and security require accountability, including for the crime of aggression. The support for Ukraine in the Swedish parliament is as strong and solid now as it has ever been. And I just learned that a couple of hours ago, the Swedish government introduced yet another military support package for Ukraine, the biggest so far, worth $1.6 billion, containing artillery, air defense, maritime resources, and other resources. And just a couple of weeks ago, we decided in Parliament about another support package worth almost as much. So we are accelerating our military and other support and hope that all European countries will do the same. We must all contribute as long as needed and to the extent required. Ukraine has shown that it wants peace, and the pressure must now be on Russia. We live in difficult times, but we must not lose faith. Europe's history teaches us that democracy is ultimately stronger than its enemies. In conclusion, I would like to quote the Ukrainian poet Katerina Babkina and her poem Eternal Memories, which provides solace and reflection when someone has sacrificed their life in a righteous struggle. So when, expected or not, the moment has come in a city where everything has been set on fire, in a country that demands too much of you, recite in your mind the names of all those you love, those who in love shall walk in your footsteps, and close not your eyes. Eternal memories, thin rays flowing through all time, fragile sounds in the air, light blue voices, glittering gold in the eyes of others. So when you are close to death, sing silently to yourself. Life gives way to life again, like the sea in the rain, and for that reason, it never ceases. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, dear Andres. Thank you for your contribution, and especially for those which we will do this year. It's a secret, but it will be. Thank you. Thank you, dear friend. Dear colleagues, I would like to bring to your attention the story of another witness of the events that took place in this small Ukrainian town in March 2022. Miss Tetiana Popovich, mother of Vladislav Popovich. He is a civilian who was abducted in the Bucha community in March 2022 and now remains in Russian captivity. Dear Tetiana, please, 1 minute for you. 1 minute for you, please.
Мій син подзвонив мені, сказав, що мама, поки не вертайся. Показав мені по відео, як горить Гостомельський аеропорт. Каже, мама, не вертайся, це не фільм, це війна, справжня війна. Я ще деякий час зв'язувалася з сином, з мамою окремо. І потім пропав зв'язок, я не могла сину дозвонитися. Дізналась про те, де мій син вже. Я після повернення, 7 квітня я заїхала в Бучу, ще неможливо було заїхати, але тероборонівці мене завезли, тому що я зрозуміла, що з моїм сином щось сталося, десь він пропав, зв'язку немає, де він, я не знаю. Їхали вони цією дорогою, і на тому місці ось машина розстріляли, і як потім вони вже втекли від машини, відбігли, машина загоріла, зірвалася і загорілася. І десь, ну, приміром, на цьому місці мій син був поранений снайпером. І я кругом кричала, що зник мій син, виставляла його фото. І ось вийшов цивільний, який мені повідомив. Я сидів з вашим сином в одному СИЗО в Курську номер 1. Він запам'ятав більше 10 прізвищ і повідомив родичам, хоч що вони живі, що вони в полоні. Своє 30-річчя він провів в полоні. Ось прізвище мого сина. Попович Владислав Валерійович в полоні. На даний момент 33 в полоні, підтверджених Російською Федерацією, і 37, здається, зниклим безвісті.
Tatiana is here, please. Tatiana, 1 minute.
Сказати ще про один бучанський.
I would like to share one more pain from Bucha. I communicate with many families whose family members were killed here in Bucha, and we have another pain. We have our captives. As of the moment when he was kidnapped, he was 29, and at that moment he was driving in a car, and then they were shot at, and thanks God he survived. And although he survived, he was taken into captivity. Having heard that he disappeared, I had been praying for him to survive. And now I have a dream. I have a dream that, and big hope that my son someday will come back. I have not seen him for more than 3 years now. And during all that time, I received only 2 messages from him. Each of them was very short, just saying that he was alive and he wanted to share with us that he was alive. I meet with all prisoners of war who are being liberated. Unfortunately, civilians are not being released these days, and all the prisoners of war who come back, they witness that all the captives are being intimidated intensively, and they are told that their country had rejected from them, have rejected them, and that they are forgotten. And now I encourage all the governments to work together to bring home our civilian people, because unlike prisoners of war, they are not subject to any international instrument which would require them to be liberated. When I meet with those prisoners of war who come back to Ukraine, I see how exhausted they are, and how psychologically damaged they are. And I understand that all our captives who now stay in captivity there, whether civilians or prisoners of war, they are psychologically exhausted and very much traumatized. Thank you for your attention.
I thank you for your strength, and I believe that your son would definitely be back home. The abduction of civilians is contrary of all norms of international humanitarian law, and the occupying power must be held accountable. Thank you very much for you shared your pain, you shared your word. Thank you very much. Let's move to our colleague from the Kingdom of Spain. I invite Mr. Javier Maroto, who is the first Vice President of the Spanish Senate. Mr. Maroto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Ruslan. Until recently, we thought that history can move only in one direction, toward liberal democracies. We thought tyrants were dead in Europe forever, and doing so, we lowered our defenses and opened the way for precisely the kind of regimes we told ourselves could never return. And now, Putin is here, and it seems to me he's not alone. Putin's main goal is to stay in power, and to do so, he is willing to destabilize his neighbors, destroying the lives of ordinary people, not only in Ukraine, but in all our countries. His enemy is all of us. His enemy is the democratic world, NATO, the European Union, and the liberal ideas that we defend. After the strong reaction of President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people defending their nation for years, and after the reaction of all NATO countries and other allies helping Ukraine for years, Putin now has another reason to increase his repressive mechanism against the democratic world. If Russian citizens realize the strength of human rights, the language of democracy, the dream of freedom, then those ideas have to be poisoned by Putin. That requires not just surveillance and internal propaganda. It also requires an offensive plan, a narrative that damages the idea of democracy wherever it's been used, anywhere in the world, not only in Ukraine, but in all our countries. This war is not only against Ukraine, this war is already happening against all of us. Putin is paying, financing, and promoting the most extreme voices in our countries, hoping to make them more extreme and perhaps more violent. In seeking to create chaos, Putin is supporting and financing whatever ideology and whatever technology may be useful. The vehicles of disruption can be sometimes right-wing or left-wing or separatist or nationalist. Let me tell you a story. Russian trolls are very active in the Spanish social media. It was completely clear at the time of the illegal 2017 independence referendum in Catalonia, as you know, a region that has been part of Spain for centuries. That illegal referendum was marked by some pro-independence protests, but they were described on social media as the brutal police repression against voters in the Catalan referendum, with the help of these Russian trolls and technology. All those trolls succeeded in reaching more people than Spanish state television, inside and outside my country. Maybe some of you have heard something about those fake news. But this Catalan story had an even longer and more complicated tale. In 2019, a close friend of the pro-independence party was sent to visit Moscow. He convinced the Russian government to help in creating secret bank accounts that would finance pro-independence operations. In Spain, of course, my country, and it happened. A few months later, a protest group with the backing of Russian intelligence shut down the Barcelona International Airport, occupied a bank, and blocked the main highway between France and Spain. The atrocities and crimes happened in Bucha cannot be compared with this, I know perfectly, but it's just an example. Listen, Putin is not only attacking Ukraine's freedom, he's attacking all of us. Russia is nowadays an autocratic kleptocracy, a mafia state, built and managed entirely for the purpose of enriching its leaders, the oligarchs, whose fortunes depend on Putin. Russian banks look like banks, but they are not banks. They are just for money laundering operations. Companies look like companies, but they are the vehicles for the oligarchs to put assets away from Russia. Vladimir Putin is in power through propaganda, corruption, and selective violence. And now President Donald Trump is trying to say, hence, Putin needs to show audiences at home and in the democratic world how little he cares about our human rights laws and not talk of democracy. So please, let's continue defending that nothing about Ukraine can be agreed upon without Ukraine. And nothing about European security can be agreed upon without the European Union. And that peace in Ukraine must be fair, comprehensive, and lasting, based on the fundamental principles of international law. And if we accept otherwise, the current international order will be at risk. There can be no peace at any price. We cannot reward Russia for its aggression against Ukraine. If we do it, any of us will be the next. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Maroto. Muchas gracias. Dear friends, and now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Juozas Olekas, First Deputy Speaker of the Seimas of Republic of Lithuania. Please, Mr. Olekas.
Thank you, dear Ruslan. Dear colleagues, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, шановні друзі. First, I visit Bucha with my colleagues from Lithuanian Parliament on April 8, 2022. I still remember it today. I see those images testifying to the aggressor cruelty. The bodies of the murderers in a common grave outside your sanctuary. For that reason, first of all, let me express my sincere condolence of the Lithuanian people of my country to the families and loved ones of all those who lost their lives to the brutal attack by racist aggression here in the Bucha and in different other cities and villages of Ukraine. And also allow me to express my deepest respect to the brave people of Ukraine who are fighting for freedom, yours and our freedom, yours and our values. In this fight, we want to achieve a lasting and just peace. It was mentioned today many times. And in this fight, we were, we are, and we will be with you, шановні друзі, until the final victory of the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. Therefore, we say no negotiation and agreements on the future of Ukraine without Ukraine. No new Yalta. Russia must be held accountable for this unprovoked and unjustified war of aggression and war crimes. We fully support the efforts of prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in investigating war crimes and crimes against humanity committed on the territory of Ukraine and urging him to continue these crucial efforts. We reaffirm our support for Ukraine Euro-Atlantic integration, and we call for a significant increase in humanitarian and military aid for Ukraine. Slava Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olekas. Our next speaker is Mr. Jan Bartoszek, Deputy Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies of the Parliament of the Czech Republic. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the floor is yours.
Mr. Speaker, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Europe has chosen to be a space of stability and cooperation. For decades, it has worked to heal historical wounds. We have believed in the possibility of peace, and we have experienced it. The foundation of peace is that all sides must want it. At this moment, I think we all sitting here want peace. The only who still wants war is Putin. And the current Russian regime is behaving as a terrorist regime, is still bombing infrastructure, killing innocent children, women, men. 3 years ago, Russians committed unimaginable crimes against civilians here in Bucha. I condemned every act of brutality and call for justice for all victims. Crimes like those in Bucha must be punished, and those responsible must face justice. It's naive to believe that Russia will stop its aggression against Ukraine. We fully support Ukraine's territorial integrity. We cannot accept a world where the stronger can take whatever they want. This is a threat for all of us. Ukraine is a free state and must have the right to decide its own future, including NATO, membership in NATO and European Union. As the Czech Republic, we broke free from the Ruský mír. We know what does it mean. And we know that we never want to experience it again. The future peace must be built on our cooperation and strength. We as the Czech Republic experienced the Munich peace in 1938, and we know that such a version of a peace doesn't work. An aggressor responds only strength, no words. A poorly negotiated peace will only lead to another war. As a UN member state, our responsibility is to act more and talk less. We must expand more sanctions against Russia and increase arms deliveries. Leaving Ukraine without security guarantees and the rights to decide its own future would be wrong. A peace agreement must include Ukraine's free choice over its future. The EU must plan an active role in shaping the conditions for peace in Europe. A poorly negotiated peace for Ukraine leads to a simple question. Who will be next? Will be the Czech Republic, Baltic states, Poland? I don't know. Answer yourself. We are responsible for the future of the world, a future where we have reliable partners, future based on the rule of law, not law of the stronger. We must act. God bless Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Bartoszek. Thank you for your contribution. Dear colleague, I will summarize. Please use your headphone because I'll speak in Ukrainian.
Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, dear speakers, your excellencies, participants, friends. This concludes our summit. In my opinion, this is a very important act in its own right for caring, for sharing responsibility, something that is so much desired by Ukrainians. We are craving for it. I would like to thank you, every one of you, and your respective delegations for feeling the need and finding the time and taking the decision to come to Bucha today, to the place of our pain. And I would like to thank you for your extremely powerful joint document that consolidated our principles, our objectives, that contains very clear signals for the rest of the world. And this is first and foremost about unity and triumph of justice. So your names now belong to history. This is a small town, but this is a great place. Exactly 3 years ago, it was liberated from the Russian occupation. But Bucha is not conquered. Bucha survived the aggression, and Bucha is reviving. And I would like to thank you, and through you, your great nations and your great peoples for all the support already rendered and being provided in such hard times and dire straits. I said great. I did say that. I did use the term. You can be large in size, but you can be miserable in spirit. Big in resources and stock of weapons, but miserable in your actions. So I would like to thank the great peoples in the great Bucha. We'll never forget your support. Without it, it would have been impossible for us, or extremely difficult to survive. Bucha is a place of pain, is a place of glory, and is a place of memory. And this is also a place of our strength and duty. A duty to investigate very carefully every single war crime committed in Ukraine, to punish the guilty parties for death, for degradation and destruction, to make everything possible to make such crimes impossible in the future. So this is a very small price that we are paying for the suffering of Bucha dwellers. And this is a very small contribution. You have seen what was done there here. And this justice is the very thing that Ukraine wants. And also we want peace. Not just peace at any price, but just lasting peace. Peace without any aggression for the future, no killing, no destruction, for Ukraine and all the United Europe, with Ukraine included. So let me thank you again for all the care, for all the assistance, for your fellow feeling, for coming to Bucha. Bucha was expecting you. Bucha was crying, but Bucha remembers, and we believe in justice as never before. Thank you, dear friends. Glory to Ukraine.
Dear colleagues, before we will finish our meeting, allow me to invite to the stage our hospital host, the mayor of Bucha, Mr. Anatoly Fedoruk. The floor is yours, please.
Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, for us Bucha dwellers to receive such a summit is a great honor, especially considering that it is happening on the very day of liberation of our community, the 31st of March. For us as Bucha dwellers, for the ones you've seen here, the survivors of this Russian aggression occupation, this is practically a second birthday. In real terms, us as survivors, we have a different outlook, a different picture of this world. We could have missed this chance to be with you here because the Russians decided to play gods and decide who was worth survival or who wasn't worthy. They killed, they raped, they tortured, they robbed. And this day of summit, you're all politicians here, politicians representing your great countries. You are making presentations, and while we are talking, this is very necessary for Mr. Putin for us to keep talking, and he keeps doing his thing. Words, of course, matter, but it is very important to support them with action. In my capacity as mayor and Ukrainian citizen, I would like to express all the gratitude in the world for your support. We have enjoyed it and enjoying it now, and will still have it. And we have sister municipalities galore. So to commemorate this visit, this summit, Bucha community would like to give some things to remember us by. For you, Ruslan, first of all, as the initiator of this summit, and for every participant, we would like to give this plaque. This is about Bucha. This is about our summit. 33 days of life, 33 days of survival, 33 days of grief. Not everyone had survived. The Portuguese embassy in Ukraine, they have this feature film on Bucha. This is just an episode of one life out of the 581 persons. And there's this great wave of Russian propaganda against this initiative, trying to oppose it. We can tell truth from lies. We can tell white from black, as somebody said here. So we are with on the light side. And this is a beam of hope, a ray of assurance that the day when we have lasting and just peace will come. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, just 1 minute. It will be a last for announcement from the Markian, please.
Hi, dear colleagues. Thank you for your participation. But it was amazing discussion. But we are very far from the schedule. So we have to compose 3 motorcades. 3 motorcades. Motorcade with the heads of the delegations is going to the next meeting, and 2 other motorcades are going to hotels. So please follow instructions of your liaison officers upstairs. Thank you so much.